So we're going to start with programming style in your brain. Now, this is two topics which would appear to have nothing to do with each other. Right? Programming style is the part of a program that a compiler ignores. So a lot of feeling is, well, it doesn't matter what you do in terms of style because since it's not significant, you can do anything you want, and one style is as good as another. I'm going to try to convince you that that is not true. Some styles are profoundly better than others, and I'll show you why. Then your brain, you know, is that big wad of meat in your skull that you think with. You know, how are these topics connected? Well, it turns out they are connected in a really interesting and unexpected way. So I'm going to be misrepresenting the work of Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel-winning psychologist. Nobel doesn't give an award for psychology, so they gave him the award for economics, but he's not an economist. He showed that one of the fundamental assumptions of economics is not true, which is that any party can be expected to pursue its own best interest. He shows that this is not necessarily the case if a party is a human being, because people do not think the way economists think we think. And in fact, generally, we don't think the way we think we think. The more you study Kahneman, the more surprised you are that we ever get anything done, because what we're actually doing is really different than what we imagine we're doing. So Kahneman described a model of thought involving two systems. There's system 2, which is the higher level thing. It's analytical, it's where we do reasoning, where we do logic, where we do mathematics. It's amazingly powerful, but it's really slow. And because it's slow, we had to invent computers, because we can't rely on this sack of meat to generate all the numbers that we need. It's just not fast enough. And it requires a lot of effort. But we have thought of amazing things using system 2. Then system 1 is associative, it's heuristic, it's very fast, it's approximate, and you cannot turn it off. It is always running all the time. And what it does is it will recognize a problem that's too complicated for it to handle, and it will instead solve a simpler problem, which is easier for it to solve, and supply that as the result. And it's approximate, so it's often right enough, and everything goes, and sometimes it's just completely wrong. But that's how it works. Now, everybody is aware of this. You know, you can think of system 2 as being the head and system 1 as being the gut, and we're always saying things, you know, my head's telling me this, my gut's telling me that. You know, so that's not new. The thing that's new is the connection between the two. It turns out that system 1 provides the working assumptions to system 2. And system 2 is unaware that that happens. And as you know, if you have any logical system with invalid inputs, you're likely to get invalid outputs. And because system 1 is approximate, that happens all the time, and we're not aware of it. So let me give you an example of this from visual processing. Visual processing is the opposite of computer graphics. It's where you take a signal from a camera and analyze all the pixels and try to identify all of the objects in the scene and how they're all moving relative to each other. This turns out to be a really important skill for any animal, right? Because you're moving through the environment and you need to recognize what you can eat and what's coming after you and ways to safety and all of that, and you need to solve those problems really fast. Supercomputers have a really hard time doing this, but we all do it all the time without even thinking about it. For us, it's an easy problem. This is like a system 1 kind of thing. And it does that by not solving the hard problem and instead solving easier problems. And sometimes that causes incorrect results. So this is an optical illusion designed by Edward Adelson of MIT. We've got a chessboard or a checkerboard with white squares and black squares, and there's a cylinder on there. And 2 of the squares are labeled A and B. And it turns out A and B are exactly the same color. You can take this image and put it in Photoshop and put the dipper on them, and they are both exactly the same pixel value. Some of you may have trouble seeing that because one is obviously black and one is obviously white, but they are both exactly the same. So to demonstrate that, I'll drop in a solid colored square to connect them, and you can see there's no break. You know, they are the same color. Now, some of you may be seeing a gradient there. Does anybody see a gradient? Your brain is lying to you. You know the truth of this image. That is a solid colored square. There's another system in your head which is trying to deal with inconsistency. That turns out to be really important because you know, if a computer system becomes inconsistent, there's a really good chance it's going to fall over, right? And so we work really hard in our programs to try to keep everything consistent. But here's a place where we're inconsistent. Reality says one thing, and our algorithms say another, and they're wrong. So we get this kind of thing. And so we are inventing the gradient in order to try to make sense out of this. And we do this all the time, not just in the visual system, but in all of the stuff that we're doing. You know, so you listen to like political debates, you know, how can we be, this is what's going on, okay? That we will reject the evidence of our eyes if it's inconsistent with what we're thinking. And so we are really good at filtering stuff coming from the world and trying to make sense out of it, and sometimes we're doing the opposite. So turned out this was not news to the advertising industry. They had known for long before Kahneman about how we think, and that they could craft messages and have them bypass the head and go straight to the gut and convince us that we desperately want things that we don't need. They've been doing this for years and years. And you can see evidence, you know, once you recognize this, it's everywhere. Like when you walk into a store, you see lots of products for $1.99. You never see something for $2.01, right? There's only 1% of difference there. It's not a significant difference. But the gut goes, oh, you know, that's a great deal. Whereas $2.01, that's a terrible deal. Okay, and since most of us shop with our guts, that's how pricing's done. And the advertisers have always known this. And nobody was better at this than the tobacco industry. Because you think about, you know, how do you sell tobacco? Okay, what does tobacco do? It makes you smell bad, it turns your teeth yellow, it makes you sick, and then it kills you. Okay, so how do you sell a product like that? You're not selling to the head, right? The head's not going to buy that. You sell to the gut. You can present images which are confusing but pleasant and acceptable, and the gut will buy them. So the gut will see pictures of happy, healthy people and associate that. And so you can confuse the gut. You know, it'll confuse good for you with slow death. And the tobacco industry has been doing that forever, and they're still doing it. And they're really effective at it. So we still have people continuing to smoke and to start smoking, despite all of our knowledge that it's very easy to get system one to override reason and fact and knowledge about something. You know, and system two will actually work against you in some cases. Like you can ask a smoker, why do you smoke? And so why do you? That's an analytical question. So that engages system two. But the input is smoking is obviously good for me. So system two will start rationalizing and coming up with reasons. You know, like I really enjoy the flavor of burning weeds in my mouth 20 times a day. I really need to experience that. And you know, thinking harder, it makes me popular. And you can say that sitting in a restaurant where all the healthy, good-smelling people are trying to get away from him so his stink doesn't get in their food. You can say it makes me popular while seeing everybody running away. That's sort of the way we work.